All right, so for this assignment and these techniques that we were learning here, this assignment is called Animals Out of Place. And what we did was kind of refresh some tools that we've gone over already with some of our earlier intro to Photoshop assignments, and we're also going to cover some new techniques as well. Part of the requirements for this is that you need 5 animal images and some sort of landscape, seascape, cityscape, something wherever you'd like to see that animal. Okay. Doesn't really matter where. The more creative, the better. Um, Main thing is they're all good, high quality images. So remember how to search for those high quality images. If you don't, then check out the resources tab for digital media and find out how. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to take these animals and these pictures and open them in Photoshop. So here's a background image that I'm going to start with. And I've got a couple images here that I want to work with. These are the samples that I've used in class as well. So if you missed it or if you need a refresher, then this is what we're going to use. Now, first thing we have to do is single out this animal and take him and put him into the new background. So think about what selection tools you have. You can use these. Sometimes you can start off with something very broad like this, object selection, and see what that will do. And it will try its best. You'll see that it's missed some things and it kind of went around some areas and made some good parts, but also left some things out like the ear. And so some of the things it's just not sure because of the image, how similar the colors and tones are of the giraffe with the background. You can see that it missed some parts around it. So what I'm going to do now is fine tune that with another selection tool like the quick selection tool. And I'm going to use my brackets next to the P to make my tool larger and smaller. And I'm going to zoom in. The more you zoom in, the better. You'll get more detail that way and more exact selections. So I'm just going to add some of these areas to my selection. I'm using spacebar to use my hand tool here. Oops, didn't want to do that. But I do not want this part here. I'm going to hold Alt, and so that selection tool turns to a minus and kind of brush along some of these areas. So you can see that kind of worked out pretty good. I'm going to do the same thing here. Alt in this area to kind of back off on the selections around this giraffe's legs. I can get real picky and go in here as well, but you'll see I'd rather select too much than too little, so I'm not too concerned if it's not grabbing everything. So I'm going to back this up here. I'm going to brush this, make sure I grab this leg as much as I can. Brush it down the side here. Good. And bring that back. So I'm going to fine tune this by adding and subtracting my selections around this animal, and I'll return once I have that done. All right, I'm fairly happy with what I have now. It's not super perfect, but it's good enough. And I think it'll work out for what I'm going to use it for. Get a little bit around this mouth area here. And now I'm ready to move this over into my background. Now, what I want to do is, you can see this is a daytime image of this giraffe, and I'm moving it into a nighttime image here. Oh my goodness, that's way too big. So what I have to do is scale it down. If you don't have these controls showing, make sure you, on your move tool, you have this checked here. So it says show transform controls. Makes it a little bit easier so you can scale things down pretty easily. Now what I want to do, I have to be choosy about where I'm putting this, because you can see that because of the grass in that previous image, my giraffe doesn't really have feet, right? So I'm trying to be choosy about where I'm going to put it. I want to make it look like it belongs in this background. And the best way to do that, and what I want you to do, is find a place where you can situate your animal to where it looks like they actually belong. Sometimes interaction with the background would help. Now this is probably a little bit larger than a normal giraffe, in this scale, so I can scale it down a little bit smaller and see how that goes. What I want to do to really make it look like it belongs is kind of make it look like my giraffe is coming around this corner right here. You might have a bush or a tree or something like that that you want to kind of put your animal behind, and that works too. So I'm going to say, okay, this is pretty good placement for that. Now what I want to do, like obviously it's not looking like it's coming around the corner. So what I have to do is create what's called a mask to make it look like this giraffe is hiding behind, not hiding behind, but coming out from behind this building. So I'm actually going to tuck it around a little bit more like this. So the feet will be taken care of because the curb will kind of give the illusion like it's covering up the feet. And this part back here, I'm actually going to lose part of that giraffe. And I'll show you what I mean. So I'm placing that. Make sure you hit enter to make sure that that image is placed. What I want to do now is create a mask, a layer mask. And so with this animal layer selected, I'm going to select this option right here. If you hover over it, it says add layer mask, and it adds this right here. Now in order for this to work, I need to be able to see what part of the giraffe I'm hiding. So I want to be able to see through the giraffe so I can see what's behind it. So I'm going to lower the opacity about 50, somewhere around there. Now I can see the line. Now the way a mask works, this is what's called a non-destructive edit. I could just erase it, but then if I went back and tried to bring it back, if I made some mistakes, you can't do that. Photoshop will allow you to undo, up to a certain number of times, but once you've gone past that, you can no longer bring back things that you've erased. So what a mask does is helps with that, and that I'm just going to use a brush, and the color is black and white. So black is what I would use to mask an object like that, so it would hide it. Now the good thing about this is that I can switch it using these right here, this little arrow, to white, and I can bring it back. I can do that anytime as long as I have this layer mask active on my layer. So now that I can see where I want to put that line and which part of the giraffe I want to mask, I'm going to go back to the black, and I'm going to start to brush away these parts of the giraffe. I'm going to make my brush a little bit larger. Now because this is like a hard edge right here on the side of the building, you can change your brush properties to where it's really hard edge. If it's something that's soft like a tree or branches, then maybe a softer edge would work better. And also changing the opacity of your mask might work as well. So you can change those properties of your brush to make it a little bit more fitting for your image. Since this edge of the building is a hard edge, I need a hard brush like that. Maybe a little bit down here near the feet to cover them where they're hiding behind the curb. Now once I have that, I can bring this up, back it out a little bit. Looks a little bit better. Now the problem is that this image of the giraffe is taken in a full daylight picture, right? It's taken in full daylight. This image that my background is in is at nighttime. So what I want to do now is create what's called some layer adjustments to make it blend in even more. So we're not done deep faking this animal just yet. So I've got it. It looks like looks like it belongs a little bit better. In fact, I could probably go in close and switch it to white and bring back maybe a little bit of this edge right here. But now I'm going to move on to some layer adjustments. I'm going to go to adjustments right here. And with this layer selected, I'm going to start with brightness and contrast. So that's this one. Click on that. You'll see that it adds an adjustment layer for brightness and contrast. Now if I change it, it changes it for the whole picture, which doesn't really do any good for me. What I want to do is assign this adjustment layer only to this animal layer. And so what I'm going to do is link them together, not with this, but I'm going to hold Alt on the keyboard, and I'm going to hover my mouse right in between these two layers, and you'll see that little arrow with the square pop up, and I'm going to click. You see this little arrow shows that now this adjustment layer is assigned to this animal. So now I can adjust this and it will adjust just the animal layer. I'm going to back out a little bit. I can change the contrast. I can change the brightness. Kind of make it a little bit darker because it's a night scene in this picture. And that looks good. I'm going to add another one, adjustments. And I'm going to try hue and saturation. And the same thing happened. It's going to apply it to the whole picture. Now with hue, it means color. And you can change the color and the tone of the whole image. Okay, which is kind of nice. You can change the saturation, how much color. You can make it completely black and white or like really hyperactive color, and the darkness and lightness of a layer. It's a little bit different than the brightness and contrast, which is great, but I want to assign this to my animal layer. So I'm going to hold Alt, click here, and now I can adjust maybe a little bit of saturation, tone it down a little bit so it's not as bright in the color. So you'll see how I've done that there. I think this is fine. I think this is probably fine as well. Really no adjustments need to be made there. But a little bit in the saturation just to kind of tone it down a little bit. So I'm going to kind of do that. And I have other animal pictures that I want to add in here as well. And what I want you to do is find a way that you can add them into your image using a layer mask. Make them look like they're behind something, in front of something. Actually, make it look like they're behind something, like they're part of the environment somehow. And then go back and add some adjustment layers and assign them to that animal layer. So I'm going to go through and add another in here as well. All right, so I have this other image here that I took and selected, and I actually brought it into my image and my background. I flipped it over because I liked it how it's coming out this way, and it's kind of weird, but it works. I flipped it and I've masked it. You can see here here's the animal, here's the mask layer, and then I went through and added some adjustment layers and applied them to the shark. So before these adjustment layers, it looked like this, which if you look at the original image, it's in a blue, it's in the ocean, and so it's really bright. And so I added a brightness and contrast adjustment, toned it down a little bit, added a hue and saturation, kind of helps a little bit, and then I added a photo filter, a warming filter on this one. And when I turn that one on, you can see now it fits really well. Part of the trick with the masking was that there's lots of details on this side. And so I had to mask around parts of the fire escape on the side of the building. But kind of like it. There's a shark now swimming around the streets of New York in the sky. So apply this to your other animals as well. Kind of go through and work with a layer mask for each animal and adjustment layers for each animal, and really make them try to deep fake this and really try to make it look like they are in this new scene, kind of Jumanji style, I guess, in a way. Anyways, have fun with this, and we'll see you next time.